Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our third installment. We're discussing again Cuban American music, and we're finally going to turn our attention to the dance craze that hits in the mid-century and is super, super popular in the U.S. So here are my lecture notes once more. We're going to start by turning our attention to son. And son is the first nationally recognized fusion of Hispanic and African music. It came about in 1910 and was really popularized by the 1920s. What it contains is a rhythmic pattern of African music that we heard in a number of the examples from section 2. In addition, though, to string instruments of Spanish origin and Latin-based lyrics, plus improvisation. So we have some characteristics that are somewhat inherent in jazz, thinking about our roots of slave music and that very diverse rhythm section that's going to be really present in son, but we're also going to have a sung element to it. Let me go ahead and pull up our first example, which is by Ignacio and his orchestra, and it exhibits a lot of key characteristics of son as it was popularized in the 1920s. Also, something to keep in mind is that 1920s, what's going on in the US fabric of music, aside from music of immigrants, is the jazz craze that's beginning. So just something to sort of make note on. But let's listen to our first example of son. Lots of call and response elements that are happening. However, and hopefully you got a good long stare at that album cover, there are so many instruments there that are accumulating to the accompaniment layer. So what's happening is sometimes we have moments of homophonic texture. They quickly give way to call and response elements between a group of voices and a main singer, or a group of voices and a trumpet player. What it is almost never is monophonic in texture. However, once we have the presence of lyrics, that's going to take our attention first and foremost. So lyrics, everything else supporting that. So while the example that we listened to of just percussion instruments is going to be more polyphonic in terms of texture, this, because it has a vocal element, is going to be more homophonic to heterophonic in texture by and large. All of this is presented within the landscape of something that's in 4/4 simple time, but we have a lot of interest that's happening within the rhythmic layer that's accompanying our trumpet or voice parts in this case. Let me go back to my lecture notes. Again, son is important because it is kind of the genre that is going to be the father genre or the mother genre, I don't care, the parent genre of all of these other dance movements. So son, really popular in 1910, 1920. Rumba comes sort of shortly thereafter in the 1930s. It's a dance craze that swept the US, and it resembles son in many ways, primarily African in origin, but it was a faster, more dramatic dance than it was associated with son. As the last one was sort of like a sort of moderate to fast tempo. The ensemble has a strong call and response texture, something we just heard in son, and it comes in 3 different varieties. But before we talk about the varieties of rumba, let me play an example of one that was popular in the 1930s. There we go. And that was, if it's not clear, from a film. And so part of the thing that's going to make something really disseminate into popular culture is its appearance in cinema. So dance makes a huge appearance in mid-century cinema. Part of that is because of the initial translation of a lot of theatrical styles to cinema, the musical being one of them, but popularity of some musical styles that incorporated dance, such as rumba, also made it up on the silver screen. Let me go back to my lecture notes once more. I don't think I'm going to have time to talk about every single subgenre of rumba, Like I said, there are three. The Yambu style is a sort of slower tempo, and the Colombia style is the most complicated type. And then we have an old style rumba that is really the fusion of an Afro-Cuban ritual. Dancers move to the beat rather erotically in this rumba, and this is a kind of conquest narrative that's played out. It also has a number of Spanish influences, such as the flamenco, and was revived in the 1950s. In that kind of conquest narrative we heard or saw rather in the example that I just played. But let me pull up another example of rumba before we leave it for other dance categories that are similar to it, like the mambo and cha-cha-cha. Okay, so this is the Yambu style, and it is at a slower tempo than what we just listened to. Want you to note the claves that are really clearly popping through in the texture. They're going to be the rhythmic organization and the backbone of what the other musicians are listening to be able to follow the form of the piece. So in this case, tempo is the big distinguishing factor from this in the first example that I played for you. We're going to notice that all of the other examples of rumba are incredibly upbeat. Colombia, which is the most complicated form, being one of also the fastest. So let me go ahead and pull up our next listening example.
Ay, yo no sé cantar Colombia.
So what we're seeing here is a lot of complications when it comes to dance, very intricate foot movement, in addition to body work, a lot of stillness with the juxtaposition of very, very quick movements. In addition to in the music, this layer that's presented very simply at first that gains complexity as it goes along. So this is the most complicated style of rumba, and it's mostly complicated in the aspect of choreographed movement, not quite so much when it comes to the music, although the call and response aspect for this particular example was quicker than the other one that we listened to and looked at. One more example of rumba before we take off and look at another dance craze. Okay, so this is our last example of rumba, and this is in the guaguancó style. It's the oldest style of rumba, and there, like I said, there is a kind of ritual association and narrative to the dance. It was, like I said, revived also in the 1950s, but let's check out this performance. rhythms, and obviously even the bystanders that were just onlookers to the performance were incorporated into the event. It's really a all-encompassing, community-driven uh, dance and music marriage that was, again, originally a part of rite and ritual. So when we return for our fourth and final segment, we're going to continue to talk about offshoots of son and rumba. Again, rumba comes from son, but we have a number of other deviations in dance forms and types that become very, very popular in the 40s, 50s, and beyond. Mambo being very popular in the 50s, Songo being very interesting and an important genre of the 1970s. Salsa also being integrated into the music scene, and later on things like timba, and I mean, the list goes on and on to conga music. So we're going to talk about as many of those final genres as we can in our fourth and final segment, but I will see you all shortly.